She was 14 years old, she was wearing a pink and gray shirt, and at 7:45 on a Monday evening, she pushed open a window, dropped to the ground, and walked away into the dark Arizona night. Nobody stopped her, nobody chased her, nobody even noticed she was gone until 30 minutes later. And by then, it was already too late. This is the story of Emily Pike, a girl who wanted nothing more than to go home. A girl the system was supposed to protect. A girl whose body was discovered 69 days later, 100 miles away, inside black trash bags left on the side of a desert highway. Her killer has never been caught. This is the Cold Case Chronicles. Stay with me. Because this story is not just about a murder. It is about every crack this child fell through on her way to that highway. It is about every door that should have been locked, every phone call that should have been made, every person who should have said her name louder. Her name was Emily Pike. Say it with me. Emily Pike. Before the night that changed everything, there was a girl, and that girl was somebody's whole world. Emily was born on May 16, 2010, in Arizona. She grew up on the San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation, a wide sun-baked stretch of land in southeastern Arizona. Red rock and open sky, a tight community where everybody knows everybody, where cousins grow up like siblings, where the land is not just home, it is identity. She had 3 siblings, she had cousins she ran around with, she had a grandmother, she had an uncle named Alred who adored her, and she had a smile. Oh, that smile. Everyone who ever knew Emily talks about her smile first. Not her struggles, not her history, not the file the system kept on her. The smile broad, vibrant, effortless. Her Aunt Carolyn Bender described it as heartbreakingly innocent, like the whole world was in on her joke. Emily loved to draw. She would sit in the back of the car, paper in her lap, pencil moving, creating worlds only she could see. She loved being outside, always on a swing, always in a pool, always running. She was the kind of kid who could not sit still, not because something was wrong with her, but because she was too full of life to be contained. She had plans, real ones. She wanted to go to college. Her mother, Steph Dosella, said Emily talked about the future with the kind of certainty that teenagers only have when they still believe the world is fair. She had no reason yet to believe otherwise. But the world was not fair to Emily Pike. It had not been for a long time. Emily's home life on the reservation was complicated in the way that so many Native American childhoods are complicated. Not because of culture, not because of community, but because of poverty, addiction, and the generational weight of a system that has never fully shown up for Indigenous people. Her parents had separated. Her father cycled in and out of prison. Her mother, Steph, struggled with substance addiction. A fight that made it hard for her to be consistently present, even though she loved her daughter with everything she had. Emily felt that love. She talked about her mother constantly. She missed her in the specific aching way that only children who have been separated from their parents can miss someone. Then, when Emily was around 11 years old, something happened that no child should ever have to survive. A relative sexually assaulted her. Let that sit for a moment. An 11-year-old girl. Someone she knew. Someone she was supposed to be safe with. When the assault was reported, the response from authorities was, and this detail should make you stop and stare at the ceiling. The case was handed to the reservation's game and fish officers. Not the police. Game and fish. Officers trained to manage wildlife and patrol rural land. The case was investigated. Then it was closed. Insufficient evidence, they said. No arrest was ever made. No one was ever charged. And Emily, the victim, the child who reported the crime, was effectively punished for being victimized. She was removed from her home, placed in the custody of the San Carlos Apache tribe's Social Services Department. Her contact with her mother was restricted. And ultimately, one Arizona lawmaker would later say during a legislative hearing, the path leading her to a group home almost seemed like she was punished for being victimized. That sentence, punished for being victimized. Read it again. In early September 2023, Emily was hospitalized. She had harmed herself. She was 12 years old, alone, 70 miles from her reservation, separated from the mother she desperately wanted to see, carrying trauma that had never been properly addressed. After that hospitalization, the San Carlos Apache tribe's Social Services Department made a decision. They placed Emily at Sacred Journey, Inc., a residential group home for girls ages 7 to 18 located in Mesa, Arizona, a suburb on the east side of Phoenix, more than 90 miles from the reservation, more than 90 miles from everything she had ever known. The group home sat on the corner of Mesa Drive and McKellips Road, a busy intersection, a buzzing Phoenix suburb, chain restaurants and strip malls and strangers. A world completely foreign to a girl raised on Apache land, in a close-knit community where people shared meals and history and blood. Emily did not want to be there. She made that clear from the very beginning. On September 11, 2023, just days after being placed at Sacred Journey, Emily and another girl at the facility escaped. They slipped out through a bedroom window, past a side gate, and vanished into the Mesa night. Police were called. The girls were eventually found at Kleiman Park, not far from the home. They were brought back. When officers spoke to them, the girls described conditions inside Sacred Journey that raised eyebrows. They said they were made to scrub baseboards, to get on their hands and knees and clean tiles. It was the language of punishment, not care. One of the girls reportedly told officers that she would escape again if they brought her back. She meant it. They always meant it. body camera footage from one of Emily's runaway incidents. Captured on September 20, 2023, the second time she fled, shows something that is almost impossible to watch without your chest tightening. A Mesa police officer is on camera following Emily through the streets near the group home. "Emily, Emily, Emily," the officer says. "Can you please stop for me so I can talk to you?" She keeps walking. She is 12 years old. She is in a strange city. She is trying to go somewhere, anywhere that feels like home. In footage from a separate incident, Emily is heard saying something that her family has played over and over because it is the truest thing she ever said on camera. "I just want to see my mom," she said. "I don't want to go back." 5 words. "I just want to see my mom." She was not a troubled kid looking for trouble. She was a child looking for her parent. There is a difference. And the people who were supposed to protect her never seem to understand that difference. Over the next year and a half, Emily ran away from Sacred Journey 3 more times. Each incident was logged. Each time she was found or returned. Each time the system reset like a machine that does not learn, and Emily was placed back in the same home behind the same window she kept escaping through. 30 missing person reports were filed from Sacred Journey Inc. between 2022 and 2025. 30. The Mesa Police Department confirmed this number. The group home's operator, a woman named Elizabeth Morales, insisted that all the other children had been accounted for, that runaways were a normal part of group home life, and they were always found. Always found, until Emily. Now here is where you need to pay close attention. Because what happens next is not just tragedy. It is a cascade of failures so specific, so avoidable, so infuriating that by the time you reach the end, you will understand that Emily Pike did not just die. She was let go. January 27, 2025. A Monday. It is evening at the Sacred Journey group home. The staff have administered medications to the girls. Emily is in her room. At some point, and the exact time is still not perfectly clear, she opens her bedroom window. She climbs out, she drops to the ground, she is wearing a pink and gray shirt. She walks out to the corner of Mesa Drive and McKellips Road, and she disappears into the night. At 8 p.m., a staff member checks on Emily's room. She is gone. The window is open. At 8:19 p.m., a Sacred Journey staffer named Kathy Montano picks up the phone and calls the Mesa Police non-emergency line. The call goes like this. The dispatcher answers. Montano says, "I'm trying to call for a child of ours. They're AWOL." She uses the word AWOL, not missing, not endangered. AWOL, a military term for soldiers who leave without permission. That word matters, because words shape urgency, and urgency determines response. The dispatcher asks a few basic questions. Montano provides Emily's information. Here is what investigators would later discover. The information Montano gave was wrong. The age was incorrect. The spelling of Emily's own first name was wrong in the report. A 14-year-old girl is missing in the dark streets of Mesa, Arizona, and the initial police report has her name spelled incorrectly. That is the foundation on which this investigation was built. At 8:19 p.m., Emily is logged as a runaway, not a missing child. A runaway. And in the world of law enforcement, those two words trigger entirely different responses. A missing child sets off alarms. A runaway gets a police report and an attempt to locate. There is no Amber Alert, there is no citywide search, there are no dogs, there are no helicopters, there is a report. Filed. Sitting in a system. Montano and the group home did one more thing wrong that night, something that would become a central failure in the investigation. They notified the San Carlos Apache Tribe Social Services Department about Emily's disappearance. They did not call the Arizona Department of Child Safety's centralized intake hotline. That call was required by state regulation. The moment a child's whereabouts were unknown, that hotline was supposed to ring. It did not ring, which meant the state agency responsible for child welfare had no record of Emily being missing, which meant Emily Pike, a 14-year-old girl who had already run away 4 times, who was on medication for behavioral and mental health issues, who was 90 miles from home in a city she barely knew, was officially nobody's emergency. Emily's mother, Steph, did not find out her daughter was gone until a full week later, 7 days. Her case manager called. Steph answered the phone, and the voice on the other end told her that Emily had been missing for 7 days. "It felt like somebody pulled the carpet from my foot," Steph would later say. "The entire time, I'd been in denial. I'd been telling myself that she's fine." She was not fine. She was already gone. In the days immediately following Emily's disappearance, something strange began to happen. Voice messages started coming in. To the police, to the group home. Messages saying Emily was fine. Emily was with her mother. Emily was back on the San Carlos Apache reservation. The messages were convincing enough that people paused. Hope is a powerful thing. When you want something to be true, you will reach for any version of reality that confirms it. But investigators made contact with Emily's mother, Steph Dosala, and Steph confirmed what deep down everyone already feared. Emily was not with her. Emily had not come home. The voice messages were lies. Whose lies? That question still lingers. Nobody has ever been formally identified as the source of those calls. Nobody has ever explained why someone would phone law enforcement and falsely claim a missing 14-year-old was safe. Think about that. Someone knew Emily was missing. Someone knew enough to make those calls. And that someone chose to send searchers in the wrong direction during the most critical hours of the investigation. A statewide missing person bulletin was not issued until January 29th, 2 full days after Emily vanished. By then, the trail was cold. By then, 48 hours of the most crucial investigative window had been lost. And somewhere out there, Emily Pike was running out of time. The first week of February came and went. In Mesa, the group home returned to its daily rhythm. The other girls went about their routines. Staff filed their reports. The system that had failed Emily continued to turn indifferent and mechanical. On the San Carlos Apache reservation, Emily's family waited. They posted on social media. They called everyone they knew. Her uncle Alred drove routes he thought she might have walked, scanning the roadsides with the frantic, methodical desperation of a man who refuses to consider the alternative. He told himself she was trying to get home, that she had found someone to drive her, that she was on the road back to the reservation 90 miles east. He told himself that because the alternative was unthinkable, February 14, 2025. Valentine's Day. It was a Friday. The sky over northeastern Arizona was pale and cold. Along Highway 60, a 2-lane stretch of road that cuts through the desert east of Globe, winding through canyons and scrubland toward the San Carlos Apache reservation, a group of people were walking a trail near mile marker 277. The trail sits in remote land, cacti and prickly pear, desert shrubs, Tonto National Forest land, the kind of place where you could leave something and it might not be found for weeks. The hikers noticed black trash bags on the ground, 2 of them, heavy, tied shut. They stopped. They looked closer. And whatever they saw in that moment, whatever made them reach for their phones and call the Gila County Sheriff's Office, that image never leaves a person. Inside those 2 black contractor trash bags were the dismembered remains of a young girl. She was found approximately 100 miles from the corner of Mesa Drive and McKellips Road, where she had last been seen alive. She was found approximately 19 miles north of the San Carlos Apache reservation. She was found 30 minutes from the home she had been trying to reach her entire life. She had almost made it. For nearly 2 weeks, the remains were classified as an unidentified female. The Gila County Sheriff's Office worked with forensic specialists. They ran comparisons. They gathered DNA. On February 27, 2025, 13 days after the discovery, officials confirmed what the family had already begun to fear in the silence of their bones. The remains were Emily Pike, 14 years old. Gone. An autopsy was performed. The results were methodical, clinical, terrible. Cause of death, homicidal violence, blunt force trauma to the head and face. Someone had struck Emily Pike with tremendous force. Someone had hit her hard enough to kill her. And then, and this is the part that makes the room go quiet, someone had dismembered her body. Her remains were placed into trash bags, 2 of them. Driven 100 miles, left on the ground beside a desert highway. Her arms were never found. Her hands were never found. Cadaver dogs searched the area for weeks. Community volunteers walked the brush. No additional remains were ever recovered. Investigators said nothing publicly about what those missing limbs might mean. But those who have spent years in criminal investigation will tell you that removing hands from a body serves one purpose above all others. Hands hold fingerprints. The Apache community erupted in grief, and then immediately in fury. In Mesa, people showed up to the corner of Mesa Drive and McKellips Road, the last place Emily had been seen, and they built a memorial. Photos of her smile, stuffed animals, flowers, a painted sign with her name in bright letters, yellow ribbons tied to the chain-link fence. On March 2nd, foster care advocates drove ribbons into poles along the street. People who had never met Emily Pike stood at that corner and wept. Everybody feels the pain, her uncle said, standing at the fence, his voice steady in the way that people become steady when the grief is so large that breaking down would mean never coming back up. We just don't want her to be another statistic. Her Aunt Carolyn sat in her home, thinking about a niece she would never see again. I cry myself to sleep some nights, she said. Her killer is still out there. Still out there. That phrase would become the drumbeat of everything that followed. Still out there. Still out there. A killer who dismembered a child. Who drove her remains across 100 miles of desert. Who left her in black bags by the road like garbage. Still out there. Now here is where the investigation reveals itself and where the anger sets in. When Emily went missing on January 27th, she was not in the Arizona Department of Child Safety system. DCS had no record of her, no photo, no file, nothing. A state senator, Corrine Werner, sat across from a DCS official at a legislative hearing and asked them directly about this. Up until the hearing, and really the Emily Pike case, I was not aware of that, Werner said. A child placed in a licensed Arizona group home. A child who had run away 4 times. A child on medication with a documented mental health history in the custody of a tribal social services department 90 miles away. And the state agency responsible for child welfare did not have so much as a photograph of her. Think about what that means if Emily had been spotted somewhere by police. If a member of the public had called in a tip. If someone had said, I think I saw that girl. Investigators would have had no image to compare. No physical description on file. No data trail to follow. She was in the eyes of the state system essentially invisible. When investigators began pulling on the threads of Sacred Journey Inc., what they found was a picture that grew darker the longer they looked. Over the past 3 years, 30 missing person reports had been filed from that single group home. 30 children. Gone, returned, gone, returned. A revolving door of disappearances that had somehow never triggered a serious investigation into the facility's safety protocols. The group home operator, Elizabeth Morales, defended the facility. She said the children were always found. She said running away was simply what happened in group homes. Always found. Until they weren't. DCS launched a licensing inquiry into Sacred Journey after Emily's disappearance. Inspectors found one clear violation. The group home had failed to immediately notify the DCS centralized intake hotline when Emily's whereabouts became unknown. That call, that one mandatory call, was never made on the night of January 27th. DCS sent a letter, dated April 15, 2025, instructing Sacred Journey to update its policies and train its staff. That was it. No license suspended, no facility shut down. A letter. Meanwhile, Emily's father filed a wrongful death lawsuit in September 2025. The lawsuit described the staff at Sacred Journey as inexperienced, reckless, and negligent. It alleged that the group home had failed to implement basic safety measures even after Emily had run away multiple times. Sacred Journey's legal response was remarkable in its brazenness. The group home blamed Emily's parents. It blamed the San Carlos Apache tribe. It claimed Emily's parents were unfit, unresponsive, and neglectful. It pointed to the tribe for placing Emily in a non-secure, voluntary residential home. And in the most stunning line of the entire legal filing, Sacred Journey stated that Emily had left of her own free will. Left of her own free will. A 14-year-old girl in medication, in an unfamiliar city in the dark, left of her own free will, was murdered, dismembered, and deposited in trash bags on a desert highway. And the group home that was paid to keep her safe said she left of her own free will. Let that breathe for a second. Here is something that haunts this investigation in a very particular way. Surveillance cameras captured Emily after she left the group home on the night of January 27th. Police confirmed this. They said images of Emily existed from cameras in the area. They refused to say where. They still have not said where. Why? In an active investigation, investigators sometimes withhold the location of surveillance footage to avoid tipping off a suspect. If they reveal Emily was seen at a specific intersection, a gas station, a convenience store, someone might know who was there with her. Someone might start covering tracks, so the footage exists. Emily was seen somewhere that night, and investigators know it, but they have not told the public. That silence is deliberate. And it means one thing: there is something in that footage that could break this case. During the first week after Emily disappeared, voice messages arrived claiming she was safe on the reservation with her mother. Those claims were lies. The question investigators have never publicly answered is this: who made those calls? Were they random? Were they someone who panicked? Or were they someone who knew exactly what had happened to Emily and was trying to redirect attention? Multiple people, described by Emily's mother as 3 potential suspects in early media reports, were brought in for questioning in the weeks after the discovery of Emily's remains. The Gila County Sheriff's Office confirmed that interrogations were conducted. No arrests were made. In July 2025, investigators were asked directly, "Has this case gone cold?" The Sheriff's Office said no, still active, working through leads, no suspect profiles, no new details to release. That is the language of a case that is running out of road. The FBI joined the investigation. They served search warrants alongside the Gila County Sheriff's Office. Cadaver dogs searched the land near mile marker 277. A task force was assembled. Mesa Police, the FBI, the San Carlos Apache Tribal Police, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. A reward was offered, $25,000. Then $75,000 from the tribe. Then the FBI added more. Then the Arizona Department of Public Safety. By early 2026, the reward for information leading to an arrest stood at $200,000. $200,000. And still, nothing. Not a name, not a mugshot, not an arrest. Not even a publicly named suspect. 1 year after Emily Pike's body was found in those black bags on Highway 60, her uncle Alred stood at the site where her remains were discovered. He looked at the land, the desert, the highway stretching out in both directions. "There are times that we do lose hope," he said quietly, "and that's when people like you come through." He was talking to a journalist, but he was talking to all of us. There is a pattern to how Indigenous children disappear in America, and it looks a lot like what happened to Emily Pike. It starts with trauma. It moves to removal. It ends in a system that was never designed for them, that does not know their name, that cannot find their photo, and that calls them a runaway when they try to go home. This is not a new story. This is a story that has been happening for generations. The missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis, is not a moment. It is a continuum. It is the result of centuries of displacement, broken jurisdiction, inadequate resources, and a law enforcement landscape so fragmented that killers have literally learned to exploit the seams. On tribal lands, violent crime rates are 10 times higher than the national average. Tribal police forces are stretched so thin that the San Carlos Apache Department, which patrols 1.8 million acres of land, had just 22 officers on duty at any given time. When a violent crime occurs on a reservation, tribal authorities generally cannot prosecute felonies. They cannot exercise criminal jurisdiction over non-native individuals. Cases slip through gaps between tribal, federal, and state authority. Sometimes the FBI arrives, sometimes they don't. Sometimes cases are solved, often they are not. It leads to targeting, one criminal justice advocate said plainly. Criminals and bad actors believe that they can get away with crimes on the Indian reservations. Emily's abuser believed that. He was right, he was never charged. And somewhere out there, the person who killed Emily Pike may believe the same thing, that the seams are wide enough to disappear through. That a 14-year-old native girl in trash bags on a highway is a tragedy that gets flowers and ribbons for a few weeks before the world moves on. They may be right about the world moving on. They are wrong about this family. Her Aunt Carolyn Bender has not stopped, not for a single day. She talks about Emily constantly, to journalists, to lawmakers, to strangers on the internet who find their way to Emily's story at 2 in the morning and cannot stop reading. She keeps her niece's name circulating because she knows with the certainty of someone who has watched the news cycle swallow other cases whole, that silence is the enemy. We're fighting for her, Carolyn said. We're trying to keep her name alive. Her uncle Ulrich testified before the Arizona legislature. He stood in rooms filled with politicians and lawyers and bureaucrats, and he made them look at what their system had done. He was measured, he was clear, he was devastating. Emily was a child of ours, San Carlos Apache Chairman Terry Rambler told lawmakers. Emily was also my personal relative. This cuts deep. And the community, the broader Apache community, the Indigenous advocacy community, the foster care reform community, wrapped itself around this family and refused to let the story end. On March 2, 2025, foster care advocates drove to the corner of Mesa Drive and McKellips Road and tied yellow ribbons to poles. On March 15, a vigil was held at Apache Gold Casino and Resort in San Carlos. People came wearing red, the red handprint, the symbol of the movement. Flags were waved. Prayers were spoken in Apache. The red hand across the mouth, it means we are silenced, it means we see you, it means we have always been here, and we will not be erased. Emily's face was painted on murals. Her name was written across protest signs. Advocates demanded investigations, policy changes, systemic reform. And then something happened that nobody expected. On May 21, 2025, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs signed legislation into law. It was called Emily's Law. The law created the Turquoise alert system, a new emergency notification framework, specifically designed to address the crisis of missing Indigenous people. When someone under the age of 65 who is a member of a federally recognized tribe goes missing under suspicious circumstances, a turquoise alert can now be issued. It functions like an Amber Alert, broadcasting information to the public, to phones, to highway signs. Ulrich Pike stood beside the governor as she signed the bill. He placed his hands flat on the table. He looked at the pen touching the paper, a law named after his niece, his 14-year-old niece who was found in trash bags in the desert. A law that carries her name forward into every future missing person case in Arizona. Emily's Law is a step in the right direction, he said. He paused. I'm conflicted. This bill is named after my niece. My niece who's not here no more. We still have to keep fighting. And here is the painful irony that nobody can look away from. Even with Emily's Law, even with the turquoise alert system named in her honor, Emily herself would not have qualified for an alert, because Emily was classified as a runaway. And runaways, by the law's own criteria, do not qualify for a turquoise alert. The system requires that law enforcement determine the person is not a runaway as the sole reason they went missing. The law, named after Emily Pike, could not have saved Emily Pike. That is not a failure of intent. The lawmakers who wrote this law care. The advocates who pushed for it care. But it is a reminder that systems are only as strong as the definitions they run on. And in this country, the definition of runaway has always been applied more broadly, more carelessly, more finely to children like Emily. There is a billboard on the outskirts of Globe, Arizona. You can see it from the highway. It faces the same stretch of desert where Emily's remains were found. $200,000. It says, for information leading to an arrest. Drivers pass it every day. Truckers, commuters, travelers on Highway 60, people who might know something, people who might have seen something, people who might have been there. The billboard stares out across the desert. The desert does not answer. As of February 2026, 1 year after Emily's remains were discovered, no arrest has been made. No suspect has been publicly named. The Gila County Sheriff's Office says the case is active. The FBI says they are still working it. The $200,000 reward has generated tips. Those tips are being followed. But Emily's family has started using a word they hoped they would never have to use. Cold. It's really upsetting, said Christopher Dosella, a family member. It's sad, and it's definitely a struggle each and every day to know that this is turning into a cold case. They gathered on February 14th, 2026, Valentine's Day again, 1 year. They stood in Mesa at the corner she walked away from, they lit candles, they played music, they prayed. A family friend named Debbie Garcia stood at the fence and looked at the memorial, rebuilt after the property owner once removed it. An act so tone-deaf that it made national headlines when people realized the memorial to a girl found in trash bags had been placed in a trash can. Rebuilt by hands that refused to let her be thrown away again. This is where you were, Emily, Debbie said softly, and we're going to be here for you, to show you that you are not forgotten. There are things investigators know that they have not told the public. They know what the surveillance cameras captured on the night of January 27th. They know where Emily was seen and with whom or what. They know what the footage shows. They know what the autopsy revealed about the timeline of her death, when she died approximately, and what that tells us about where she was in the hours between leaving the group home and ending up on that highway. They know what the voice messages said. They know where those calls originated. They know if the dismemberment is consistent with someone who had done this before. They know things. And somewhere in Arizona, someone else knows things too. Someone who knows what happened on that road. Someone who made those false phone calls. Someone who packed 2 black trash bags and drove 100 miles east on Highway 60. Someone who knows where Emily's hands are, that someone is still out there, still breathing, still walking around, still living a life that Emily Pike will never get to live. Still out there. Emily Pike would have been 15 years old in May 2025, 16 in May 2026. She would have been drawing in the back seat of some car. She would have been swinging, swimming, laughing with her siblings, arguing with her cousins the way cousins argue when they love each other. She would have been applying to colleges maybe. Planning, dreaming, she wanted to see her mom. That was all she wanted every time she climbed out of that window. Every time she walked away from a system that did not know how to hold her. Every time she ran through the streets of Mesa with a police officer calling her name in the dark. She wanted her mother. She never got there. A permanent memorial is being built, a bench and a tree at Fitch Park in Mesa. The Arizona Department of Transportation will erect a highway sign at milepost 277 where hikers found those bags on a cold February morning. The sign will say her name, Emily Pike, so that the people who drive Highway 60, the road that runs from Mesa East across the desert to Globe, past the land where her body was found, 19 miles north of the reservation she called home, will slow down. Will read the sign, will say her name, it is the smallest thing, and it is the most important thing, because the dead deserve to be named. And the living deserve to know that when a child disappears, the answer is never just a report and a wait. The answer is urgency. The answer is communication. The answer is treating every missing child like the emergency they are, regardless of how many times they have run before, regardless of what word a dispatcher uses on a Monday night phone call, regardless of whether their tribe or their state is supposed to be responsible. The answer is Emily's name on a sign so that no one who drives that road can ever say they did not know. Before we go, there are 3 questions that keep her family awake at night. 3 questions that everyone who has followed this case carries with them. Who made those false phone calls claiming Emily was safe on the reservation with her mother, and why? What did the surveillance cameras capture on the night of January 27, 2025, and will those images ever be made public? And most urgently, most painfully, most crucially of all, who killed Emily Pike, and when will they face justice? If you know anything at all, contact the FBI's Phoenix Field Office at 623-466-9099 or submit a tip at tips.fi.gov. The reward is $200,000, but more than that, a family is waiting. A community is waiting. A 14-year-old girl who just wanted to see her mother is waiting. She deserves an answer. If this story moved you, if you believe Emily's name deserves to be heard louder, please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment below. Tell us, what do you think happened in those missing hours? What do you think investigators are holding back? Drop it below and share this video, because visibility is the only weapon a family has when the system fails them. Emily Pike, say her name.